Today we're gonna talk about the power of drum samples. What's up, my name is Nick from the Future Musician, and today I wanted to talk with you guys about the power of drum samples. So there's a few reasons why you would be willing to use drum samples in your music and in your music production. One of them is to enhance your drum sound. So when you record drums or you work with MIDI drums, you want to beef up the sound a little bit, or give it a little bit more length or stuff like that. You can add in drum samples to fill the gaps that are missing for your ears. So that's the way I use it quite often. The other thing is we all want our productions to stand up against the big productions, like the big commercial productions, and in those productions the use of drum samples is quite normal. So yeah, if we want our productions to live up to that standard, yeah, sometimes we have to give in to that and use drum samples ourselves too. Another reason why you could use drum samples is to fix a bad recording. So if a drummer isn't that tight and you have edited the whole thing and you hear some artifacts, if you use samples on top of that, yeah, you can mask the editing mistakes or stuff like that a little bit. Wouldn't be my first choice to use it that way, but it could be a fix. And another reason to use drum samples is to create consistency within your drum performance. So lots of drummers, also great drummers, they don't hit as hard every time. They don't hit perfectly in the middle every time, which means that the snare or the kick or the toms, well, the kick not, but the snare will sound different in one hit and different in another. So if you want to create some consistency across the whole track, it might be a good idea to put some samples underneath it to create consistent hits. And you can do that underneath your real hits. You can still have the feel of the drummer, but you make it a little bit more consistent. Alright, so there's also a few ways I like to use the samples for myself. So one way I like to use drum samples is if I'm creating a demo, or if I am writing and I just want to get some drums happening to jam on top of it. I always like to put in some good sounding drum samples, because they can really give you a vibe. And if the drum samples sound shit, yeah, it's not very inspiring. So you want drum samples that sound good to get your creative vibe going if you're creating a demo or if you are writing a song. So another way to use them, we just talked about it a little bit, is to enhance the sound of your drums. And you can do that with real drums, but you can also add your samples to MIDI drums. Nowadays there are lots of great MIDI drum VST instruments, but I don't think they sound as good as like you hear in normal productions, like for pop, rock or metal music. So adding drum samples to your MIDI drums can also make them sound, more ballsy and make them sound better. And the same goes for live recorded drums. Recording drums is really difficult, especially if you don't have a good room sound. Your drum may sound very small, so what you can do is add drum room samples to your drums recorded in a small room to give the illusion that they were recorded in a big room. Or if your snare, for instance, sounds a little bit thin, you can layer a fatter sounding snare underneath it to beef up your sound a little bit. Or the other way around, if you have a real beefy snare, you can put a thinner, more attacky snare on top of it to create a little bit more impact. So there's lots of different ways you can use samples to enhance your existing drum sound. And the final way I use drum samples is sample replacement. I find myself doing this not so often, but sometimes for certain genres it's a cool thing to completely change up the drum sound. And then you still have the overheads, you still have the room mics, which gives your whole drum sound a natural feel. But let's say for heavy music, it's quite common to just load in some fat and heavy samples to create a thick drum sound and add in the overheads and the rooms to get the natural feel. But yeah, all the hits are just samples. I don't do it that often, but if you're into heavy music, you should listen to some heavy music and listen to the drums. Like, every hit is the same, every kick hits as hard as the other kicks. So yeah, for some genres it works, and why not? Alright, so I got a session opened up for you, and I just wanted to let you hear for yourself what the effect is of adding in drum samples to, in this case, MIDI drums. What I did is I created some drums in, it's called Get Good Drums. I will put a link in the description. I think for me it's one of the best sounding drum VST instruments to get real sounding drums. But still, they lack a little bit of punch, and I wouldn't necessarily use only that for my final production. But I'm just gonna let you hear for yourself what the effect is of adding in some drums. So first, I'll just play the drums for you without samples, and then I will add the kick and the snare sample underneath the existing drums. So here we go. So yeah, that's quite a difference. And yeah, I wanted to let you hear the sounds for yourself. So what that did for me was that it completely changed the drum sound, and it made it sound much more beefy and much more fat. And yeah, that's what I like in drums. So I wanted to show you guys what we actually did was just I used a program called Trigger by Slate, and every time a snare drum is hitting, it will create a you will see the snares hitting, and it will fire a trigger underneath it. So those are the hits. So yeah, these are my own drum samples. I created my own drum samples. So if you want to buy those, the link is in the description. Go to bigfatsamples.com. There you can find those drum samples, and I use them all the time. I think they're great, and they work well with a variety of different genres. So here I put a Black Beauty snare underneath it, and a lower wooden snare. Together they create a sound like this. And these are layered underneath the MIDI drums. And the same goes for the kick. So this is a Yamaha kick. It sounds like this. And it's layered underneath the other kick. So when we put the kick and the snare together, and you put that together with the rest of the drums, it sounds like this. With the rest of the music. So it instantly sounds more finished, if you will. So if we just take out the kick and the snare sample and we play the track, it would sound like a demo. Still not bad, but with the samples underneath it. So yeah, that's the power of samples. So in almost every production I do, I use drum samples, and I use them a lot because I like the sound of heavy drums. But it's quite hard to find natural sounding drum samples that still hit hard and have a lot of bottom end. And I couldn't really find those, so that's why I took a day to just create my own drum samples and make it sound the way I want it. And I find myself using those samples all the time. If you like those, and if you like the samples you're hearing, just go to bigfatsamples.com and then you can check it out for yourself. So that's it for today. Let me know in the comment section below what drum samples you like to use and whether you like the sound of these. Would love to hear your feedback. Also make sure to hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. And then I will see you guys in the next video.